The new season of JoJo Part 7 Steelboat Run just dropped recently and it's already making a huge impact in the world of anime. Although Netflix is butchering as much as possible with their release schedule, but nevertheless JoJo is getting bigger and bigger over time because of its incredible, unique and bizarre art style, with full of meme-worthy moments, actions, jokes and poses what millions of people enjoy. In this video I will rank every single animated part's main protagonists, villains and side characters, so if you are a JoJo fan then buckle up and let's get started.
Grind, pain, joy.
So we have 7 animated parts so far and all of the parts have their uniqueness. Recently I rewatched the whole series again to refresh my memories to give you the best review as much as possible. Part 7 Steelboat Run won't be featuring in this video that much because it is still an ongoing series, but outside of that everything else is included. So with this in mind, let's start with the first part which started all. Part 1 Phantom Blood. When I first saw this part, I hated it so much. It is just so different from the rest of the series. As you can guess, it wasn't my first JoJo. Thanks God, otherwise I would not continue to watch JoJo any further. It was bad. But if I wanna be polite or a gentleman, I would say Phantom Blood is a really medicore story with a very medicore protagonist and cast who are basically hunting zombies and vampires with a super uninteresting ability called Hamon, which is basically some sort of holy power generated by special breathing techniques to kill zombies and vampires. The main protagonist, Jonathan, is a super generic written hero type of character with a pure heart and a gentleman manners. His design is nothing outstanding outside of his sheer size. The side characters are also super boring. Speedwagon is a bit funny because he is basically narrating the whole part 1 frame by frame, and Zeppeli is also nothing special, basically a holy Bruce Lee who mentors Jonathan in his short journey. The fights in part 1 are also really boring to watch. The whole plot is super basic, good versus evil, with a stone mask which can turn people into vampires who can be destroyed by the power of Hamon or the sun, so it is a snooze fest. However, the only thing which was entertaining in part 1 is the main villain of the story, Dio Brando. He hard carried the first part. You can feel that Dio's voice actor Koyasu Takehito had a great time while voicing him. Dio is super evil, a great villain based purely on charisma, a complete utter bastard, but you can't look away when he's on screen. But outside of him, part 1 was just hard to watch. So I rank part 1 as the lowest of all JoJo animes, and people who think otherwise are mentally ill. I'm sorry Charlie, you need to check yourself.
Please sell us on part 1.
So, compared to other parts, it is clearly the weakest and the most uninteresting. I mean, Araki had to start it from somewhere, so it is what it is. Whenever I recommend JoJo to someone, I always warn them about part 1 to just skip it or watch it later because it is not fun. So the honest keyword for part 1 is boring. Therefore, it is a D tier for fun, D tier for protagonist, B tier villain, D tier for support, C tier for bizarreness, and D tier for fights.
Goodbye, JoJo!
The next one is part 2 Battle Tendency. So what everything went wrong with part 1 was eventually fixed and heavily upgraded in part 2. Our main protagonist, Joseph Joestar, is the clown of the show, sometimes called as the best JoJo. He really heavy lifted the medicorness what the first part protagonist Jonathan had. He is funny, dumb, cunning at the same time. The whole part 2 is full of bizarre adventures what made the whole story a quite enjoyable ride. The side characters like Stormheim, Lisa and Caesar were all great, especially Stormheim, he was hilarious to watch. The rivaling between Joseph and Caesar, which eventually led to their strong friendship, was also entertaining to watch. Lisa on the other hand was a bit lackluster. I wish she had more interesting screen time. However, the fights in part 2 were much better than in part 1, but it is still limited to Hamon only, so it ran out of creative steam very quickly. Like that bubble Hamon technique was quite lame in my opinion. The villains in part 2, the Pillar Man, were also fun to watch because of their bizarre and weirdest abilities and look, but character-wise they weren't very interesting, but nevertheless entertaining. Especially Wamu, he was such an honorable foe till the end. I love Wamu. Wamu might be bigger gentleman than Jonathan.
それはあの男が誇り高き戦士だったからだ。戦士への敬意のためだ。
Anyway, part 2 is still significantly improved from part 1 with a way better protagonist and way better fight story and weirdness. Like almost naked gay men posing and fighting non-stop was quite entertaining to watch. I enjoyed how Hammond was expanded in part 2, but it is definitely neither more interesting nor impressive than Stan's. Even though part 2 was really fun to watch, it is still a bit boring because of the lack of Stans. So the honest keyword is fun. Therefore it is an A tier for fun, A tier for protagonist, C tier for villain, B tier for support, A tier for bizarreness, and C tier for fights. The next one on the list is part 3, Stardust Crusaders.
やかましい。鬱陶しいぞこのアーマー。
So, if you thought JoJo can't really evolve itself any further, then you were dead wrong, because Stardust Crusaders brought everything to the next level. Probably the most well-known JoJo part, which set the foundation for the future seasons with the introduction of stands. Araki literally created a battle system that revolutionized shonens, being able to basically remove the problem of power creep. Part 3 main protagonist Kujo Jotaro is the most well-known JoJo character to date. He's super badass and cool, but because of his unlimited aura farming gigachat personality, he's even funny.
ちょっとあんた、子供のものを何すんのさ。
あんたの子か。
違うわよ。
なら黙って景色でも見てな。
The rest of the cast are also hilarious. Everyone had their moment throughout the series, no matter if you talk about Kakyoin, Polnareff, Abdul or old Joseph. Even Ikki had so many epic moments. Dio's minions were also hilarious to watch. The Japanese voice acting in part 3 was the peakest in my opinion. If you watch JoJo in English, then you are doing it wrong. You should watch it in Japanese immediately. English voice actors could never ever reach the peakness what Japanese voice actors can do. They really put their hearts into these characters.
バカな。エメラルドスプラッシュを弾き飛ばした。てめえのことじゃねえか。
Dio returns as the main villain again, and he's even more meme-worthy than ever before. He's still evil just like before and still full of charisma, but this time the main protagonist is equally fun and badass like Dio, so it is such an epic showdown between the two. The fights in part 3 are also peak. The stand battles were really entertaining to watch, especially because you have no idea what's going to happen, and you can feel it on the characters as well.
なんだこりゃ。
I think in part 3 they used the words Nani and Bakana the most times in all JoJo parts.
何？
In part 3, stands and their capabilities are quite simple, but because of their simplicity, it is quite easy to understand and enjoy. The fights are great, the jokes are great, the whole story is simple but entertaining. Stardust Crusader has a perfect cast of characters on all sides, heroes and villains, with a long but eventful journey to Egypt.
レイズするのは俺の母親の魂だ。
It is bizarre, it is weird, and it is full of epic moments, memes, fights, and non-stop aura farming. Part 3 is one of the peakest JoJo parts. No matter how many times I rewatched it, it keeps me entertained every single time. Part 3 is all about entertainment, and they magnificently delivered it. Also, the music in Part 3 is just perfect, so many unforgettable melodies. I had a blast watching this part, therefore the honest keyword is masterpiece. So it is an A tier for fun, A tier for protagonist, A tier for villain, A tier for support, B tier for bizarreness, and A tier for fights.
Do you understand?
The next one is Part 4, Diamond is Unbreakable.
姫のセリフをバシッと。
お前なんか全然怖くなかったぜバーク。
So after part 2 and Free Joyride, part 4 fell short in so many levels. It felt like a huge downgrade compared to the previous parts. I have no idea why many people are considering this as one of the best in the series when it is so slow paced, with so many filler aimless episodes, especially the first half of it, which doesn't have anything to do with the main plot the slightest. This slice of life part 4 also had a very weak protagonist compared to part 2 and 3, Josuke with a very weak design. His stand design was also quite mid, especially with that heart-shaped bucket head. Even though Josuke was supposed to be the main protagonist in part 4, the heavy lifting story and entertainment-wise was done by side characters like Koichi, Jotaro and Kishibe Rohan. And let's not forget about Yukako because she was hilarious to watch.
光一くんのこと好きなんです。どっちなの？私のこと愛してるの？愛してないの？さっさと答えてよ。食べさせてあげるわ。どうしたの？食べなさいよ。
Until the main villain reveal, the first half of part 4 was a snooze fest, but after the reveal of Kira Yoshikage, everything has changed and became much more enjoyable.
この週末は楽しく過ごそうじゃないか。二人きりで。
Kira is such a well-written villain character. Unlike the other villains who wanna enslave humanity and rule the world, he just wants to have a simple and peaceful life. He just wants to be unnoticed and live for his hobby of serial killing. Kira is just so much fun to watch in part 4, and thanks to him, part 4 was saved.
ちゃんと吐き直せ。これで落ち着く。
The fights in part 4 are on a weird spot because there are plenty of boring stand battles, but also one of the peakest ones, so it is hard to decide. But again, to keep myself true to the title of this video, part 4 in general is overrated, and it is boring until Kira Yoshikage. The moment he steps into the story, it becomes a great sequel to the previous parts, but to finally get to the good stuff, you have to watch 21 aimless, boring episodes. Therefore, the honest keyword is
Disappointed!
So it is B tier for fun, C tier protagonist, A tier for villain, A tier for support, C tier for bizarreness, and B tier for fights. The next one is part 5, Golden Wind. The fifth part is probably the best animated JoJo with an interesting story and great stand fights. Our protagonist is also quite cunning and the team he joins are also really likable characters. Especially Butcherati, even with his weird ass hairstyle and Ayana Mirai headset. There aren't many bad things I could say about the fifth part. Maybe some stands and their capabilities like Golden Experience is a bit over the top, like it has the biggest plot armor of all JoJo's, and also Giorno is not really interesting protagonist. It felt like Butcherati and Mista were the main characters in this part and Giorno was just a side character. Also Giorno's design was just slightly upgraded version of Josuke by having a weird ass hairstyle and similar clothes, which I personally didn't really like or care. While Giorno has plenty of great fights throughout the story, maybe because of his stand he feels quite untouchable, and because of that he felt quite boring to watch. Whatever happens, Golden Experience has a counter against it, like that snake brick antidote scene made me roll my eyes. His personality was also quite lackluster. Furthermore, he's also somewhat boring because of how little he drives the plot compared to Butcherati and the others. He really feels like just a side character among the rest of the team. But outside of that, part 5 is really good. Oh, I almost forget, I always do. Part 5 main villain, Diavolo, is so lackluster, I always forget he even existed. I rank Diavolo as the most unsatisfying villain of all JoJo series. Yeah, he had two different personalities and the phone calling scenes were somewhat funny, also his stand was quite troublesome, but compared to other JoJo villains he was just not entertaining to watch. So part 5 had a somewhat boring protagonist and a forgettable villain, but the rest was excellent. Therefore, the honest keyword is peak, so it is an A tier for fun, D tier for protagonist, D tier for villain, A tier for support, B tier for bizarreness, and A tier for fights.
Arrivederci.
The next one is Part 6, Stone Ocean.
ジョリーどっちなんだよしたいのしたくないのか
Many people hate on Part 6 for no reason. This part was really decent and it did everything it could. It was well animated with interesting stand fights with a poser villain and a huge twist in the end of JoJo's. It didn't surpass the previous seasons of course, but I wouldn't call it bad either. Jolene as the main protagonist was really entertaining to watch. She evolved a lot throughout Part 6 and she became one of my favorite JoJo's. One of the reasons why I like Jolene is because she never gave up and she kept fighting forward to her goals even against the odds. Which is basically true to all Joesters, but in her case she had a much weaker stand and a weaker body, so she had to use her brain more than the rest. She also had a likable team around her as well, like the baseball kid, Anasui, Weather Report, Foo Fighters and Hermes.
でもまあいっか逆に増量したぜラッキー
We had plenty of great fights throughout Part 6, so Stone Ocean is a good all-rounder. Jotaro has returned as a supporting character again, even though he was taken out from action quite early. Later on he joins back the fight. The main villain Pucci was also such an interesting and funny villain in Part 6. Just like Jolene, he got stronger and smarter over time thanks to his strong plot shield. Not as strong as Giorno's, but almost. Also, he was the first villain who more or less achieved his goals. So overall, Stone Ocean was really fun to watch, the characters were great, the fights were awesome. However, it still suffers because of its setting. Most of Part 6 takes place within the walls of a prison, which caused the series feel stagnant. Furthermore, one of the most iconic characters meets their end in this JoJo part, which made many people quite sad, including myself. The second half of Stone Ocean was peak in my opinion. It just felt amazing to watch. With Stone Ocean, a huge JoJo saga ended to give its place to another storyline, what we know as Part 7 Steelball Run. Therefore, honest keyword, decent. So it is B tier for fun, A tier for protagonist, B tier villain, B tier support, B tier bizarreness, and A tier fights.
No.
So about Steelball Run, there is not much to say. I didn't read the manga and the anime is butchered by Netflix. The animation looks nice, but as far as I can tell, it didn't suppress Part 5 animation wise, and it didn't hype me up either like Part 3 did. So it's hard to say. When the whole series ended, I will make an updated version of this video. Anyway, we finally arrived to the tier list section of this video. So I will start by ranking each part. The good thing in ranking is that everyone has their own version. So if you are disagreed, just express yourself in the comment section below. So, on the last spot is Phantom Blood because it is bad. If it was up to me, I would just use it as a flashback in part 2 and 3 instead of torturing the viewers with that 3 hours of runtime. Next one is Diamond is Unbreakable, cause it is a snooze fest until Kira. From Kira it was really fun to watch, so for the second half I could give much higher ranking, but as a whole part it's not that good. On number 4 I put Battle Tendency cause it is a pure comedy with full of jokes, weirdness, but the lack of stance still hurts this otherwise entertaining part. On number 3 I put Stone Ocean. Not much to say, it was great. On number 2 is none other than Golden Wind because of its amazing stand battles and animations. Sadly, Giorno and Diavolo tanked its first spot. And in number 1 is none other than Stardust Crusaders because it is a masterpiece. The next ranking is Main Protagonist. On the last spot I placed Jonathan because he's not really interesting. If he had a stand I might put him a bit higher, but yeah. On number 5 is Giorno Giovanna because he's also quite boring and his stand capability was out of this world. On number 4 I placed Josuke, not much to say, he was just mid. On number 3 I placed Jolene, she was badass and her voice actress did a wonderful job with this character, I really enjoyed it. On number 2 is none other than Joseph, he's great, funny and entertaining. And on number 1 spot is the only main guy, Kujo Jotaro, with his unlimited aura farming gigachat personality. An important side note about Jotaro: many fans considering Jotaro as an uninteresting thug, but the thing is, I can speak in Japanese and his voice actor Kono Daisuke puts tremendous amount of personality into Jotaro throughout his voice acting, what foreigner fans obviously won't understand, even with dub. So this is why I place him at the number 1 spot. I enjoyed all the scenes he was in. The next ranking is for the best villain. Diavolo obviously lands on the last spot. He was really uninteresting to watch. On number 5, Cars and the Pillar Man. They were fun to watch, but they were not very interesting. On number 4 is Part 1 Dio. He was just pure evil with full of charisma. I loved him. On number 3 is Pucci. He was a great poser and he was a tough foe who managed to slaughter the main cast. Number 2 was a tough decision, but I placed Dio even though I love the dude, but Kira is just freaking funny to watch, so Kira gets the first spot and Dio the second. And for the best side characters, well, there are a bunch, so I couldn't really pick only one person, but on the last spot I placed Zeppeli and Speedwagon because they were nothing outstanding. Caesar, Storheim and Lisa Lisa were all great, but there are better support characters than them. On number 4, Weather Report, Anasui and Hermes. On number 3, Kishibe, Rohan, Jotaro and Koichi because they drove the main plot in part 4. On number 2, Stardust Crusaders because all of them were peak. And on number 1 spot are Bucciaretti and Mista, but the rest of the team were great too. Anyway, do you agree with my review and ranking, or do you disagree? Let me know in the comment section below. Also tell me your version of JoJo ranking, and if you want to support my channel, please consider to leave a like and subscribe. Anyway, thank you for watching and have a good one.